countries like China and India. And EU officials have confirmed that the navigation system on a plane carrying the European Commission president was jammed. The plane reported interference with its GPS, radar, and other tools before landing safely. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has that story.
They suspect that this was due to blatant interference by Russia.
The European Commission says Bulgarian authorities suspect that Russia is behind a recent plane jamming incident. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was heading to Bulgaria on Sunday when her plane's navigation system was reportedly blocked. The EU says the plane was unable to use GPS, radar, direction finders and more while approaching the airport to land.
We are, of course, aware and used to somehow to the threats and intimidations that are a regular component of Russia's hostile behavior.
Meanwhile, von der Leyen is in Lithuania on Monday. The EU has been using the profits from Russian assets frozen in the West to support Ukraine. Von der Leyen now says this project might be expanded.
So far, 3.7 billion euros have been generated by windfall profits, and more is to come on a regular basis.
She added that Russia should be held accountable for the invasion of Ukraine. A group of Western allies called the Coalition of the Willing is scheduled to meet in Paris on Thursday, talking about security guarantees for Ukraine. And in Kiev on Monday, the country bids farewell to a former parliamentary speaker killed in a shooting. Pro-Western politician Andrei Paryubi was shot dead in the city of Lviv on Saturday. Ukraine's national police chief on Monday said there is Russian involvement. Everyone will be held accountable. Also on Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China. He praised a meeting he had with President Trump in Alaska 2 weeks ago.
The mutual understanding that was reached at a recent Russia-U.S. summit in Alaska heads the same direction. I hope it paves the way to peace in Ukraine.
Putin made the comments during the two-day meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The organization is an international group founded to counter Western alliances. Among other things, the Russian president used the occasion to strengthen ties with the Iranian regime.
I would like to highlight our friendly relations as well as the special and many-sided nature of ties between Russia and Iran.
During remarks on Monday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping set out a vision for a new global order challenging the US and the West. Xi says non-Western leaders should rearrange how security and economic structures are being set up. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Children began school yesterday in Israel, and officials say it's because of Israel's achievements in the war against Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israel refutes the accusations from a scholars association alleging genocide in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has that story.
On Monday, first graders played in the band as they welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on their first day of school. He visited a school in Galilee in northern Israel, an area that faced regular attacks from the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group in Lebanon, until they reached a ceasefire last November. Schools in Israel have faced closures for almost 2 years now, since the war started after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. Netanyahu said this after meeting with the students.
At the beginning of the war, we saw abandonment, but today, 95% of the children in the north have returned to schools, even in the border settlements. This is a tremendous achievement.
A student at another school said it was very exciting to return to school, but added this.
And it's really upsetting and really sad that you need to go to school with knowing that there are still hostages in Gaza.
And U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee visited a school as well.
Israel has to get the hostages back, and Israel has to defeat Hamas. And how that happens is something that Israel has to decide.
However, on the same day, a group called the International Association of Genocide Scholars accused Israel of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The association's president said this.
There isn't just a blanket right to self-defense. So that self-defense has to be carried out in a proportionate manner, and it also has to be shown to be something carried out from military necessity, neither of which are demonstrated anymore by Israel's actions on the ground in Gaza.
Israel's foreign ministry in a post on X responded to the group's accusation, saying, quote, "It is entirely based on Hamas's campaign of lies and the laundering of those lies by others." For instance, Israel says that when the Hamas terrorist group provides the number of deaths in the war in the Gaza Strip, it doesn't distinguish between combatants killed and civilians killed. John Spencer, chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, spoke about the issue on the Middle East Forum podcast. He said that Israel has done more to prevent civilian harm than any military in the history of urban warfare, with measures like evacuating cities and giving advance notice ahead of combat operations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And staying in the Middle East, the Israeli military announced on Sunday it had killed the longtime spokesperson for the Hamas terrorist group's armed wing. That's as the IDF expands their operation in the now militarized Gaza City. Joining us to discuss the situation in Israel is David Wormser. He's an analyst for Middle East Affairs for the Center for Security Policy. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's start with your general assessment as to where the war is in Gaza, the remaining strength of Hamas, as well as the situation with the hostages.
Well, I mean, the situation with, I'll go in backwards order, situation with the hostages, there are 48 left, of which 20 are alive, or we think are alive, 2 of which are in very critical condition. So really between 18 and 20 are left alive. They are in tunnels, heavily guarded, with orders by Hamas operatives to kill if the Israelis approach in any way close to where they are. So it's a very difficult situation with the hostages. And that's been the big barrier to freedom of action for the Israelis on one level. As far as where we are in Gaza now, Israel is at the cusp, I think, of wrapping this up. But wrapping this up doesn't mean just going for a ceasefire and ending it. It means going for the final defeat of Hamas and removing it from power physically, because there's no real deal left that the Israelis are negotiating. So at this point, we're at the cusp of a major Israeli thrust into Gaza. Gaza is where Hamas still has most of its organized force left. It's the center of gravity militarily of Hamas. So the Israelis are hoping that once they take Gaza City, Hamas begins to collapse, and maybe some of the hostage holders will give up, thinking that it's their life, they can save their lives by giving up hostages. So that's the hope they have for the hostages. But essentially, we're on the eve of an escalation before Israel goes for final victory and wraps it up.
I have a million questions in a couple of different directions, but one thing you said makes me want to follow up on that point. Do the Israeli Defense Forces know where the hostages are at this point, or they just know that they're heavily guarded? What more could you tell us about that?
No, they seem to know where they are more or less. I mean, they don't know maybe exact geospatial location, but they do know that they're, say, in this neighborhood or so. The problem is these tunnels are 30, 40, 50 meters underground. They're very small and very thin. It's impossible to really access the hostages in a commando operation without tripping so many different layers of security that Hamas has put in those tunnels. So a rescue operation is extremely difficult or outright impossible in many of them.
And moving on from the hostages, there's a whole bunch more that we could cover there, but I want to bring your attention to the hospital that was hit last week, where there were suspected terrorists. There were 5 international journalists killed. What details have emerged from the incident?
Well, a number of things. First of all, as we have learned many times with hospitals, schools, all sorts of facilities in Gaza, they're doubling as basically their cover for operational structures for Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It hides behind civilians, and it hides behind civilian and international structures. Schools are no different. The hospitals are no different. In this specific hospital, it has held hostages. It has denied service. There was a situation where the American-led aid effort had 20 of its people injured critically about a month or two ago. And this hospital, because it's run by Hamas, refused service and let them die. So it's a very strongly Hamas-affiliated institution. But more importantly, the Israelis have been plagued by snipers and spotters. And this hospital served as a lookout post, and that area of the hospital was essentially a operations center for Hamas. As far as the journalists go, forensics and comparing it to the lists of terrorists that Western intelligence services have, almost all of those journalists also doubled as Hamas operatives.
Now, I want to pan back. Obviously, a lot to explore there, but Charles Kushner, the ambassador to France from the U.S., which is home to Europe's largest Jewish population, broke with tradition by criticizing the French government and Macron directly. He took a strong rebuke from Macron, but he said that they're not doing enough to combat anti-Semitism in France. Interestingly, Macron is the one who is leading the initiative at the UN this month at the General Assembly to recognize Palestinian statehood, and he is now joined by Germany, Canada, UK, Belgium, Spain, and Ireland. All of these countries are having significant rises in anti-Semitism. So what do you make generally of these Western leaders' push for Palestinian statehood at this pivotal moment, as you said, where Israel really is on the cusp of fully getting to the center of where Hamas is, where their power base is?
That's an excellent question, because it links things that are to the Hamas side, to the side of a lot of these in Europe who are attacking Jews. It links the issues which in their mind are linked. The problem here is that once October 7th happened and the grisly attacks and invasion of Hamas was done, any action to recognize a Palestinian state that emerges from this war would be seen as a validation of the attack and the attack on Jews, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust in one day. So there's no way you can decouple it. I mean, even if you wanted a Palestinian state, which the Israelis have decided is too dangerous and they're not going to accept it. But let's say even if they did, at a minimum to have it decoupled from the war and do it in a year or 2 or 3. So it's not seen to be a result, a success, a victory granted Hamas for its attack. The problem with that is it also, or the problem with recognizing it also suggests that it was okay to attack the Jews on that day because it succeeded. It got the Palestinians their state. And that diminishes and essentially erodes the support for Jews in Europe. There seemed to be fair game at that point, and that's exact by the immigrants and so forth, which is the source of most of these attacks on Jews.
And David, we've run out of time, but I want to get real quickly your thoughts going from Charles to Jared Kushner meeting at the White House. Tony Blair in the meeting. Does he have a role in all this, do you think, over the next coming weeks and months?
Well, I think Tony Blair was there because he's been involved with Arab-Israeli peacekeeping going back 30, 40 years. And he gives a certain continuity and credibility to it, although I don't think he plays a very vital role here. The British government is not listening to him on Middle East policy too much. And the opposition, the more conservative parties in Britain, don't like him anyway. So his currency is limited, but he does represent continuity with the past. Jared Kushner, I think, is far more involved, and because he represents really President Trump's vision for where this will go.
Very much appreciate all your insights. Seems like a pivotal moment, as you say. David Wormser, we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
A devastating landslide has wiped out an entire village in Sudan's west region of Darfur. The Sudan Liberation Movement Army says about 1,000 people were killed in the village of Tariffs, with only one survivor. The landslide hit on Sunday after days of heavy rainfall, flattening the community in the Mara Mountains. The group says the village was completely leveled and is appealing for UN and international aid. Sudan's ruling council said all available resources have been mobilized for the region. The tragedy comes as civil war and famine leave much of Darfur cut off from humanitarian support. And the death toll from Sunday's earthquake in Afghanistan has climbed past 1,100, with thousands more injured. Officials say the magnitude 6 quake struck near Jalalabad, leveling more than 8,000 homes. Emergency responders are still struggling to reach remote villages where more victims may be trapped under the rubble. The World Health Organization says at least 12,000 people have been directly affected, calling the devastation painful and unbearable. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this.
A major earthquake struck southeastern Afghanistan late on Sunday. It's one of the worst such disasters in the country in recent years.
It was midnight when the earthquake started and shook us all violently, even breaking our house. God had mercy, and we managed to escape outside.
This was my brother's house, and he, along with 3 of his children, were martyred. My other brother, together with his sons, was also martyred there. 2 of my nephews have also been martyred. This is the condition of our home. Our dead are lying there on the ground.
The 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck just before midnight local time at a depth of 10 kilometers. The epicenter lay near the eastern city of Jalalabad. It's one of the 5 largest cities in Afghanistan and the capital of the Nangarhar province. Tremors were also felt in other South Asian countries, including neighboring Pakistan and India. Authorities scrambled to rescue survivors. A provincial public health head said they prepared 4 or 5 ambulances last night.
We traveled during the night and arrived here at early morning prayer time after walking for 5 to 6 hours. Currently, 4 to 5 helicopters have carried the injured, and the evacuation is still ongoing.
The Afghan Taliban government has mobilized several teams related to security, health, transport, food and more to ensure comprehensive and full support is provided to those affected. At least 40 flights have been carried out to transport bodies and more than 400 of the injured. Afghanistan is prone to devastating earthquakes, and it experienced tremors with a magnitude of more than 5.0 on at least 4 occasions between April and August alone. Sunday's earthquake, however, is the worst since June 2022, when a 6.0 magnitude quake killed more than 1,000 people. Afghanistan's location is at the intersection of 2 major tectonic plates, the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. As the Indian plate moves northward and collides with the Eurasian plate, the pressure between the two creates regular seismic activity in the region. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
And coming up, traditional French restaurants could disappear while tourism supports the sector. French people are changing their dining habits with less money to spend on going out. We're going to have that story and more. Stay with us.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. President Trump urged drug companies yesterday to make public the data on COVID vaccines that they've shared with him to clear up what he calls a mess over the drug's effectiveness. The president demands an answer as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is, quote, being ripped apart over the question, according to him. Just last week, the CDC director was fired over disagreements over vaccine policy with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Several officials also stepped down in protest. Staying with the Trump administration, they are heading to the Supreme Court to defend sweeping tariffs struck down by a lower court. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the tariffs are critical to fixing trade deficits and fighting fentanyl, and he's preparing a legal brief to underscore the urgency. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro is calling it the most important economic case in U.S. history. Meanwhile, the administration is also weighing a national housing emergency that could ease tariffs on building materials. And lawmakers are set to return to Washington this week to tackle important bills on national security, crime, and violence in U.S. cities. The Trump administration is working with Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to pass a comprehensive crime bill. It's expected to address issues like cashless bail, as well as increased police funding. Congress will also have to pass government funding for fiscal year 2026 before the end of September, or they're going to face a government shutdown. And the death toll from Sunday's earthquake in Afghanistan has risen past 1,100, with nearly 3,000 more injured. Rescuers are still struggling to reach remote villages where more victims may be trapped under the rubble. The World Health Organization says at least 12,000 people have been directly affected. Those are this morning's top headlines, and with that, Steph, back to you.
Thank you, Carrie. 3 people, including a child, have been hospitalized after a minivan plowed into crowds at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania's Capona Festival. Police say the van drove around barricades just after 6 p.m. yesterday when the 3-day festival was ending. Harrisburg's mayor said a 6-year-old boy was critically injured, while a city worker and a woman in a wheelchair were hospitalized in stable condition. Officials say it's still unclear if the crash was intentional, but the driver has been taken into custody. Police say the van struck multiple objects and traveled several blocks before coming to a stop. Capona Festival is a Labor Day tradition in Pennsylvania's capital, celebrating Native American heritage, and we'll be keeping you updated there. France's famed dining culture is under strain as restaurants lose customers. Rising prices, tighter budgets, and new habits are shaping how people eat out today, leaving many restaurant owners struggling to adapt. NTD International correspondent David Vivaz reports from Paris.
France is known for its long lunches and lingering dinners. However, many restaurant owners said they've seen fewer customers lately. Professional points to rising prices, driven by inflation as a key factor. According to the Hospitality Union, restaurant attendance fell 15 to 20% in July and August, with some regions seeing drops of up to 30%. Diners are also ordering less, skipping starters, sharing desserts, and choosing a glass of wine instead of a bottle. Restaurant owner Alain Fontaine says this is part of a trend that began 5 years ago.
In fact, just to assess how dangerous the situation is, 25 restaurants are closing every day. Since the COVID crisis, there has been a clear acceleration. There was a slow decline before, now there is a sharp one. We are seeing more bankruptcies, the desertification of restaurants, and a shift in consumption habits.
He says there are many factors behind the shift. In addition to the rising cost of living, Fontaine says remote work after COVID has encouraged people to order food deliveries instead of dining out.
We let the French and tourists go to fast food restaurants, steam restaurants, and others. And that's something the government needs to respond to today. Because that's a fact. In 2030, or rather in 2040, there will be no more traditional restaurants in France as you know them if we don't react.
Fontaine is a restaurant owner who continues to practice what's called traditional French cuisine, a menu priced between $16 and $27 on average, including starter, main course and dessert, made with fresh ingredients and with dishes rooted in French culinary traditions. While some French restaurant owners have chosen not to raise prices and still manage to do well, newcomers to the restaurant world face very steep challenges. He says there's hope to change the shift, pointing to tourism as a major supporter of French cuisine.
We know that 43% of tourists who come to France come for the food, for the appeal of the food. When Americans come in and see the decor and hear the way we talk, the way we express ourselves, and taste the food and say amazing, it's like a medal for me every time. That's it. We have to save that. We must remain optimistic. There is a generation of young people who are truly enthusiastic and passionate about this profession. As I said, we will have to give them the means to communicate, but we must also be careful to reintroduce restaurants in local communities.
In September 2024, Fontaine succeeded in having French restaurants and cafes added to UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Up ahead, Sao Paulo in Brazil is gearing up for the NFL season opener. Massive murals adorn apartment buildings, and a giant football has taken over a main avenue in the city.
And leaders in the nation's capital share Labor Day greetings while the Labor Department's headquarters shows off a decorative look for the holiday. We're going to have that more. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan green vegetable omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
The Design Studio by Mathis Home is where your home decorating dreams come to life, with heirloom quality pieces for every room in your house. Right now, get the lowest prices of the year on top designer brands like Hooker, Universal, and Bernhard. We're the only place with designer furniture in stock, with complimentary delivery and design services. For the latest in luxury and style, visit us now for exclusive discounts. Now through Labor Day, only at the Design Studio by Mathis Home.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Democratic and Republican leaders in Washington, D.C. shared greetings for Labor Day.
And the White House highlights its efforts to make improvements for the American worker. NTD correspondent Jason Blair from D.C. reports.
Democrat and Republican leaders celebrate Labor Day with messages on social media. Former President Biden writes, "Today we celebrate American workers, the heart and soul of our nation." Vice President J.D. Vance writes, "Happy Labor Day to the workers who make America great." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer shares a Labor Day greeting with a video from New York.
I love New York labor.
And the White House touts efforts to improve the private sector, including, quote, slashing job-killing regulations by reducing penalties on small businesses and creating more jobs by bringing manufacturing and production, quote, back home. The White House also highlighted its efforts to create more apprenticeship programs, something Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Remir says she's been working on.
The president wants 1 million active apprentices, and so I'm on the ground talking to the trades, talking to the firefighters, talking to law enforcement.
And this Labor Day, amid President Trump's beautification efforts for Washington, D.C., the Department of Labor is decked out with hundreds of American flags in its lawn and two big photos, one of President Trump and one of President Theodore Roosevelt, along with a giant American flag in the center. The Department of Labor was established in 1913 by President William Howard Taft. Labor Day was first recognized as a holiday on a national level in 1894. President Grover Cleveland signed a law establishing the first Monday in September as Labor Day. Coming into the weekend, some members of President Trump's cabinet shared stories of their first jobs.
My first job was as a lifeguard.
My first job was working in the Washington Zoo.
My first job was not unique. It was delivering newspapers in downtown Honolulu.
Well, I started at my local community library.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Great report from Jason there. Now, from the joy of getting your first paycheck to the revulsion of something like scrubbing public bathrooms, on Labor Day, NTD Sam Wong headed to the National Mall in D.C. to talk with people there about their first ever job experience. Each of these stories is a small yet powerful reflection on the American dream. Let's take a listen.
What was your first job and what did it teach you about the value of work and life?
I was a paper boy. Earned enough money when I was 12 to buy a car when I was 15.
My first ever job was at Taco Bell. And
oh, geez.
Yeah, in Asheville, Ohio. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. You know, I ain't gonna swear, we're on TV. So, but it was quite the experience and put me ahead now.
Any horror story?
No, not really, you know, other than, you know, flying flies in the beans.
So my first ever job was at the beach. I was a rental attendant. And then I also waited tables at a retirement complex. So both those jobs kind of taught me some different things. One, just the value of hard work, because I had to dig a 3-foot hole to put the thing in every morning. And then, just the ability to communicate.
My first job was working at Chick-fil-A, and I actually still work there. And I got that job because I wanted to buy a car.
So you're still saving up?
Yes, still saving.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
It was a little bit different than the average job because I was a professional figure skater and I traveled across the United States and Canada. Sometimes we had to do 3 shows a day, and by that 3rd show, everybody was so tired, but you still have to physically, be a show person and put it on.
Talking about value of work and life, what did your first job mean to you?
What did it mean to me? Pretty much, like I said, it just gave me a different stability where, if you want something in life, pretty much you have to work for it and go get it.
Just being able to make money and pay for things. You know, back then it was the 70s and I had $3,000. I could buy a 1973 Camaro.
Probably with Chick-fil-A, it's one of the higher end fast food companies, and so our values are very get your food out on time, make sure it's right, and make sure it's really fast when it comes out.
I was handling money and receipts and all that kind of stuff at 15, and I had never handled any money before. I had to learn honesty too. I pocketed $120 the whole time I was there. Felt awful about it. The next day, turned in the receipt and put it in there. I couldn't sleep that night, so I was like, I'm not going to steal ever again.
Honestly, I wanted to come home, but my parents said, no, you signed a contract. You will fulfill the contract. So I learned perseverance, and you work, you get paid, you fulfill your obligation.
I'm inspired. Steph, what was your first job?
I filed medical records in a medical center.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. What was yours?
For me, my first job was working in my dad's business. I did everything from painted the walls, I delivered the mail. This was all pre-computer, so everything was done on paper. But it was my second job, which I take the skill to this day. I worked at the local deli, and I can make a heck of a sandwich, and I still can. Yeah.
Why have you not yet made any of us sandwiches?
We'll
It's a hidden talent you've just uncovered.
Now I'm on the spot. I'm going to have to do it later today.
Indeed. Okay, so life lessons there. I think from mine, I learned, well, I had to show up every day after school, which in the beginning was fairly annoying, I have to say.
Okay.
But as a 14-year-old, I wanted to go and hang out with my friends a little.
Sure, of course.
So there was a bit of discipline there involved, obviously, with any job. But I think that, the curse being the blessing is a big lesson. And also, I think the power of rhythm and routine in your life is something I continue to appreciate.
Responsibility too, and a little extra pocket cash.
All the R's.
Yeah. My 14-year-old daughter's doing a little babysitting, so good on you, Grace. Get out there and do some work. So.
Oh, babysitting. Babysitting is a good one. Did a lot of that in my time. All right, next up. In Manchester, England, a band is giving new meaning to organic songwriting.
That's right. Plants and fungi are taking center stage with the help of bionic arms. Have a look.
It was magical just to actually see a plant and to see it actually move quickly and have arms and start to play an instrument was just absolutely incredible. We connect the plants through some equipment that measures the internal bioelectrical signals in the plant, and that's converted into a music language which is called MIDI. And that is then translated into motor signals, which is how the robotic arms move.
Oh my gosh, this is quite interesting. John Ross, Andy Kidd, and their mushrooms together make up a group called Bionic and the Wires. They've been getting mushrooms and plants to make music since 2023.
And the mushrooms are supplied by a local urban greening initiative called Sow the City. The band proposes that the project helps people see plants and fungi as active, emotional beings. And it appears that they've been involved in growing food in urban areas since 2009. So the next step, of course, is to take that food and put it right into the musical band.
I mean, there's a real fascination or trend towards interest in all kinds of edible mushrooms. Lately, even in the grocery stores now, you can find very interesting varieties. This week I am cooking with mitake, I think it's called, mushroom, which I've never eaten before, but saw it there on the shelf and thought, okay, give this one a try. Yeah, so there you go.
For the vegetarians out there, too, it's a whole new world with some of these mushrooms, like the morels and all. Yeah, you can get some real complex and meaty flavors out of those mushrooms.
And the texture can be so meaty, so dense. All right, well, stay tuned. We've actually got much more coming up in the next hour. We look forward to seeing you there.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories.
I jumped in there, didn't I?
I love it.
All right, President Trump demanding data on vaccine effectiveness as he says debates are over the jab are ripping the CDC apart. What's his take on vaccines, and what's the latest on DC crime as Trump floats sending troops to Chicago?
And the fate of Trump's tariffs now rests with the Supreme Court. Why his advisors say the case could decide America's economic future.
Congress returns this week facing several high-profile issues, crime, Epstein, and a fast-approaching deadline to fund the government.
A landslide in Sudan has flattened an entire village. An armed group in control of the area says about 1,000 people were killed with a single survivor.
And a political economist warns that China's Communist Party is rooted in terror and secrecy. The author of the new book, Institutional Genes, dives deep into the shadowy beginnings of the CCP.
And a new study suggests red meat could help with good mental health. The South Dakota State University research points to potential benefits from the gut to the brain's health.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Great to have you with us.
This is Tuesday, September 2nd, and you're watching NTD Good Morning. Today's top news, President Trump is urging drug makers to prove vaccine effectiveness. As he says, debates are dividing the CDC.
That's right. He's also touting a victory in the D.C. crime crackdown while urging other cities to work with him. NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu brings us the latest.
President Trump is urging drug companies to make public data on COVID vaccines that they've shared with him to clear up what he calls a mess over the drug's effectiveness. The president demands an answer as he says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is being ripped apart over the question. Last week, the president touted his first administration's vaccine development efforts during COVID.
Operation Warp Speed, people say, is one of the greatest achievements ever in politics or in the military, because it was almost a military procedure.
In his Monday post, President Trump acknowledges debates over vaccine effectiveness. Just last week, the CDC director was fired over disagreements over vaccine policy with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Several officials stepped down in protest. And in other news, President Trump is praising D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser for working with his administration to combat crime in the nation's capital.
We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C.
Since the D.C. crime crackdown began 3 weeks ago, authorities have made over 1,500 arrests and seized over 160 illegal guns. The president is calling D.C. a, quote, giant victory and says that the crime rate has come down to virtually nothing. 54 people were shot and 7 killed in Chicago over Labor Day weekend. But the Chicago mayor this weekend ordered city police not to work with National Guard troops as President Trump threatens to send them.
It's un-American, if you ask me. A U.S. president invading an American city. I've never heard of such a thing. It shouldn't happen.
While Governor Pritzker warns that a federal deployment without the state's request would be unconstitutional, the president urges Democratic leaders to work with his administration, just like the D.C. mayor. The White House on Thursday saying,
as President Trump has said, all of these elected officials in charge have to do is pick up the phone and ask for the president and the federal government's help.
President Trump says that Mayor Bowser's ratings have gone up since her cooperation and that other cities could see similar results if they worked with his administration. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
The Trump administration is preparing to defend its sweeping tariffs at the Supreme Court. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the case is critical to both America's economy as well as the fight against fentanyl. Here's that story.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he's confident the Supreme Court will uphold President Trump's tariffs. Bessent told Reuters Monday he's finalizing a legal brief for the U.S. Solicitor General, underscoring the urgency of the tariffs. The Solicitor General will oversee the government's appeal to the Supreme Court. The move comes after a divided appeals court ruled Friday that most of the tariffs are illegal, but allowed them to remain in place until October 14th while the case advances. Bessent says the tariffs are justified under emergency powers, citing both rising trade deficits and the fentanyl crisis linked to about 70,000 American deaths each year. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro issued a stark warning on Monday, saying the fate of the United States rests in the court's hands.
This case is arguably the single most important economic case that has ever come before the Supreme Court.
He said if the lower court's ruling is upheld, it will be impossible for America to defend itself from fentanyl poisoning and what he called the hollowing out of supply chains.
By the end of the day, we'll lose another couple of hundred Americans. It's over 1 million since the fentanyl war against America started. And if that's not a national emergency, I don't know what is.
Secretary Bessent told Reuters the brief would be submitted Tuesday or Wednesday. He said it would focus on the idea that U.S. trade deficits were reaching a tipping point that could lead to far greater consequences. At the same time, Bessent said the administration is considering the declaration of a national housing emergency over high costs. That could mean tariff exemptions on key building materials to help lower construction costs. Bessent also spoke to Reuters about Trump's firing of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. He said that Cook should be removed or step down if the allegations against her are true, and noted that she had not denied them. Trump fired Cook last week after the new head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, William Pulte, accused her of mortgage fraud. Cook is suing the Trump administration, saying Trump did not have the legal authority to remove her.
President Donald Trump says he will award Rudy Giuliani the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor.
The announcement comes just after the former New York mayor was hospitalized following a car crash.
Giuliani's son confirmed yesterday he had been released from the hospital and was recovering, though still in pain.
A spokesperson says the crash in New Hampshire left Giuliani with a fractured vertebrae and other injuries, but he added that Giuliani was in great spirits.
The former New York mayor won acclaim for leading the city through 9/11. Later, the former lawyer became a central figure in Trump's challenge to the 2020 election results. He was disbarred and criminally charged. He's denied wrongdoing.
Trump yesterday called Giuliani the greatest mayor in the history of New York City and an equally great American patriot. And Congress returns to D.C. today with much to get done. Perhaps the most looming is the budget deadline kicking in at the end of the month, which, if unaddressed, would result in another threat of government shutdown. Joining us to discuss is Tommy Aiello. He's Senior Director of Government Affairs with the National Taxpayers Union. Tommy, thank you for joining us this morning. I believe the Senate and the House have only been able to find consensus on the military package, one of the 12 bills that it needs to get done to avoid the deadline by September 30th. Can you break down where we're at in terms of avoiding that looming government shutdown?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. So things are going to get a little interesting in Washington over the next 3 weeks. They have until the end of September to fund the government. If not, one of three things is going to happen. There'll be a government shutdown, which no one wants to see. That means federal offices will be closed. Or two, a short-term funding option called a continuing resolution that will fund the government over a short period of time. Or three, if Democrats and Republicans are able to work together on a bipartisan budget agreement, that would fund the government through the end of the next fiscal year, which would be September of 2026. So there's a lot at stake over these next 3 weeks, and it's unclear about which path Congress is going to take.
Got it. Now, as you say, if they take the normal path, a bipartisan one, Senate Leader John Thune, he would need to gain the support of 7 Democrats to avoid a filibuster. Is that likely to happen in your view?
I don't think it's likely to happen for a few reasons. Because if there is a bipartisan budget agreement, if passed as prologue, we will see a higher level of spending than we've ever seen. Unfortunately, to get Democrats to the table to come to these agreements to pass a long-term budget, typically they ask for a significant higher funding amount. And that's bad news for taxpayers because, one, we're $37 trillion in debt and we're running $2 trillion a year deficits. If we continue to spend as if money is not a problem, we're going to keep adding to the deficit, adding to our debt, and we're going to continue to see higher levels of inflation. What NTU, the National Taxpayers Union, would like to see is a return to pre-COVID spending levels. That would save about $400 billion a year and begin to tackle this long-term debt problem that has plagued us for too long.
Yeah, and it seems like with the moves that the Trump administration has been making, they, in some respects, want to go down to those levels, but potentially offsetting some of that with tariff revenues. But coming back to the matter at hand, if a bipartisan approach to avoid the filibuster is not likely to happen, can you explain some of the scenarios with a CR or a continuing resolution?
Sure. So a continuing resolution would simply just allow the government to spend at the current levels. So there would be no disruption to federal offices or, the ability for people to get their Social Security. What it simply says is Democrats and Republicans, they agree a government shutdown is really bad. So we're going to pass a short-term solution to ensure that, one, we can continue to negotiate and we can continue to keep these offices open. In the past, like what we've seen at the beginning of the Trump administration, was a 6-month continuing resolution. So I think that is the most likely scenario where we see a short-term option without the possibility of a government shutdown. But again, anything can happen in this town, and we'll have to see if Democrats would even want to play ball for that continuing resolution. That still requires the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. And, Democrats, they don't want to be seen working with the Trump administration. So it's unclear if 7 Democrats will come to the table and say, hey, we should fund the government just for a short period of time and take the ability for a government shutdown off the table.
Might be a good time to review how they were able to get the previous CR done if it did require Democratic support. And do you see that likely to play out in this next month as they try to avoid a government shutdown while also trying to achieve their political ends?
Yeah, we'll have to see. So on Friday, the Trump administration did something called a pocket rescission, where they clawed back, without Congress's approval, about $5 billion worth of foreign aid money. There was a pretty immediate reaction from Democrats on the Hill, where they all condemned what the president had done. So we'll have to see how the dust settles with that, because Democrats want some say in the process. And, if they look at what the Trump administration is doing with things like the pocket veto, and it's very possible more things like that might be coming, it could sort of taint the water a bit for these conversations, both for a long-term funding solution and a continuing resolution. So we need to see how that dust settles, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks.
Yeah, we haven't seen too many examples of Democrats supporting the Trump administration's ends, but we did see that 6 months ago. Who were the Democrats and what justifications did they give as to why they felt that, it would be better to just not allow a shutdown at all to happen, but having to, join forces with the Trump administration?
Yeah. Historically in the past, no one has wanted to see government shutdowns. Even from a pro-taxpayer conservative perspective, no one wins in a government shutdown. One, government workers still get paid, but they're not working. Two, it just, adds to this atmosphere in D.C., especially outside of the Beltway, that D.C., no one can agree on anything. So what we saw 6 months ago at the beginning of the Trump administration was even the Democratic leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer from New York, agreed to work with Democrats, and he was able to, with Republicans rather, and he brought over a handful of Democrats to be able to support this continuing resolution that runs out at the end of this month. So hopefully we will see Leader Schumer continue to rise above some of the discord that his party is involved in, and he'll be able to bring over a few more Democrats as well, whether it's a 1 month continuing resolution or even a year-long continuing resolution. We think any continuing resolution is better than the alternative of one, a government shutdown, and two, really high levels of spending that could very much appear if there is a bipartisan budget agreement.
And just as we finish up, what is the taxpayers union advocating for?
At this point, we really want to see spending at lower levels than last year. The House of Representatives, they're in the process of passing all of their appropriations bills, something that they are that the Senate should be doing, but unfortunately they're really not. They're offering to spend at lower levels than last year, and all told, it could save about $10 to $15 billion. That's a small step in the right direction, but at the end of the day, we're going to need to return to pre-COVID spending levels, save $400 billion a year, potentially do another reconciliation package that's focused on debt and deficit reduction. There's about $1 trillion on the table there, and then more rescissions packages from the Trump administration that we think could save another $10 to $30 billion. When you add it all up, you could potentially be saving hundreds of billions of dollars a year. That's a lot of money, especially when we have $2 trillion a year deficits, and the bill is going to come due in just a couple years.
We appreciate you sharing your insights with us this morning. Tommy Aiello, good to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up, a look at the diplomacy between China, India, and Russia at the China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and what the three nations are potentially planning.
And school has started in Israel, and officials say it's due to the achievements of the Israeli military. Meanwhile, Israel pushes back after a scholars association accuses the country of genocide. Jason Perry brings us the details. Stay with us after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。 时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟他的琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. A gathering in China, including the Chinese Communist leader, the Russian president, and the Indian prime minister, took place in the city of Tianjin yesterday in China. Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping aimed to push his vision of global governance and a reshaped world order.
So what happened at this year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit? Here are the key takeaways that you should know.
India's Prime Minister Modi made his first visit to China in 7 years, joining the SCO summit in Tianjin. During his talks with Xi Jinping, Xi downplayed border tensions and called for a dragon-elephant dance, symbolizing harmony between China and India. Modi said the ties between the two countries shouldn't be influenced by any third party. A viral moment showed Xi, Modi, and Putin chatting and laughing together. Shortly after, the three leaders addressed NATO's eastward expansion. And in the summit speech, Xi criticized bullying in global affairs. He urged the members of the SCO to stand against hegemonism, reaffirming China's regional leadership. Just before the summit, Xi also met leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, showing support for the two nations joining the SCO. On Monday, Xi announced 100 new small but impactful livelihood projects across SCO countries. These new supplementary initiatives follow China's Belt and Road project. Xi also unveiled plans to set up 10 new Luban workshops over the next 5 years. These training centers are seen as successors to the Confucius Institute, aiming to export China's soft power push through education. In addition, Xi pledged roughly $280 million in grant aid to the SCO member states by the end of the year. Chinese officials say the recent summit was the largest since the organization began, with 26 countries taking part. The organization now includes 10 full members and 2 observers, with the combined economy nearing $30 trillion. At the summit, Xi unveiled his global governance initiative, calling for respect for international law and global trade order. But critics say that China's actions, from militarizing the South China Sea to flooding markets with cheap products, to covering up COVID-19, tell a very different story. However, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres praised China's fundamental role in supporting multilateralism. Xi also called for deeper cooperation on AI and invited countries to join China's International Lunar Research Station project. The summit wrapped up with the Tianjin Declaration. Notably, it didn't mention Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign ministry called it a failure of Moscow's diplomatic efforts. After the summit, Putin will attend China's military parade on September 3rd in Beijing's Tiananmen Square.
And children began school yesterday in Israel, and officials say it's because of Israel's achievements in the war against Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israel refutes the accusation from a scholars association alleging genocide in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has that story.
On Monday, first graders played in the band as they welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on their first day of school. He visited a school in Galilee in northern Israel, an area that faced regular attacks from the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group in Lebanon, until they reached a ceasefire last November. Schools in Israel have faced closures for almost 2 years now, since the war started after the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. Netanyahu said this after meeting with the students.
At the beginning of the war, we saw abandonment, but today, 95% of the children in the north have returned to schools, even in the border settlements. This is a tremendous achievement.
A student at another school said it was very exciting to return to school, but added this.
And it's really upsetting and really sad that you need to go to school with knowing that there are still hostages in Gaza.
And U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee visited a school as well.
Israel has to get the hostages back, and Israel has to defeat Hamas. And how that happens is something that Israel has to decide.
However, on the same day, a group called the International Association of Genocide Scholars accused Israel of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The association's president said this.
There isn't just a blanket right to self-defense. So that self-defense has to be carried out in a proportionate manner, and it also has to be shown to be something carried out from military necessity, neither of which are demonstrated anymore by Israel's actions on the ground in Gaza.
Israel's foreign ministry in a post on X responded to the group's accusation, saying, quote, "It is entirely based on Hamas's campaign of lies and the laundering of those lies by others." For instance, Israel says that when the Hamas terrorist group provides the number of deaths in the war in the Gaza Strip, it doesn't distinguish between combatants killed and civilians killed. John Spencer, chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, spoke about the issue on the Middle East Forum podcast. He said that Israel has done more to prevent civilian harm than any military in the history of urban warfare, with measures like evacuating cities and giving advance notice ahead of combat operations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
A devastating landslide has wiped out an entire village in Sudan's western region of Darfur. The Sudan Liberation Movement Army says about 1,000 people were killed in the village of Tariffs, with only one survivor. The landslide hit on Sunday after days of heavy rainfall, flattening the community in the Mara Mountains. The group says the village was completely leveled and is appealing for UN and international aid. Sudan's ruling council said all available resources have been mobilized for the region. The tragedy comes as civil war and famine leave much of Darfur cut off from humanitarian support. And the death toll from Sunday's earthquake in Afghanistan has climbed past 1,100, with thousands more injured. Officials say the magnitude is 6 quake struck near Jalalabad, leveling more than 8,000 homes. Emergency responders are still struggling to reach remote villages where more victims may be trapped under the rubble. The World Health Organization says at least 12,000 people have been directly affected, calling the devastation painful and unbearable. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this.
A major earthquake struck southeastern Afghanistan late on Sunday. It's one of the worst such disasters in the country in recent years.
It was midnight when the earthquake started and shook us all violently, even breaking our house. God had mercy, and we managed to escape outside.
This was my brother's house, and he, along with 3 of his children, were martyred. My other brother, together with his sons, was also martyred there. 2 of my nephews have also been martyred. This is the condition of our home. Our dead are lying there on the ground.
The 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck just before midnight local time at a depth of 10 kilometers. The epicenter lay near the eastern city of Jalalabad. It's one of the 5 largest cities in Afghanistan and the capital of the Nangarhar province. Tremors were also felt in other South Asian countries, including neighboring Pakistan and India. Authorities scrambled to rescue survivors. A provincial public health head said they prepared 4 or 5 ambulances last night.
We traveled during the night and arrived here at early morning prayer time after walking for 5 to 6 hours. Currently, 4 to 5 helicopters have carried the injured, and the evacuation is still ongoing.
The Afghan Taliban government has mobilized several teams related to security, health, transport, food and more to ensure comprehensive and full support is provided to those affected. At least 40 flights have been carried out to transport bodies and more than 400 of the injured. Afghanistan is prone to devastating earthquakes, and it experienced tremors with a magnitude of more than 5.0 on at least 4 occasions between April and August alone. Sunday's earthquake, however, is the worst since June 2022, when a 6.0 magnitude quake killed more than 1,000 people. Afghanistan's location is at the intersection of 2 major tectonic plates, the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. As the Indian plate moves northward and collides with the Eurasian plate, the pressure between the two creates regular seismic activity in the region. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Up ahead, a new study suggests red meat could help with good mental health. The South Dakota State University research points to potential benefits from the gut to the brain's health.
And traditional French restaurants could disappear. While tourism supports the sector, French people are changing their habits and they have less money to spend on dining out. We're going to have that story and more. We'll be right back after this short break.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health, my own mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I've never been more devastated than the day I lost my mom. I was depressed, miserable, in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came. My pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. The chaos that was in me began to subside. I was more focused, clear. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. That's not up for debate. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had 0 chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Over to China now. Political economist Chenggang Xu grew up in Mao's China, beaten and imprisoned during the Cultural Revolution. Today, he's a Stanford scholar and the author of the new book, Institutional Genes.
Xu told American thought leaders Jan Jekielek that Beijing has long deceived the world about its true intentions. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports.
Political economist Chenggang Xu says the nature of the Chinese Communist Party is fundamentally different from conventional political institutions.
The Chinese Communist Party is actually a part of the Soviet Union Communist Party. So it's a historical fact that it was created by Soviet Union, and from the very beginning of establishing the Chinese Communist Party, it followed all the basic principles, the basic rules of the Soviet Communist Party.
According to Xu, the Communist Party isn't a political party in the true sense. He points to Max Weber's definition, which describes political parties as voluntary groups competing for votes and power.
A communist party does not allow other organizations exist. So it controls all organizations. It's not within, it's above. So all the organizations have to be controlled by the Communist Party. And also, it's not voluntary. So entering and exiting from the party, these are not voluntary. A Communist Party is a secretive political organization from the very beginning till today.
In his book, Institutional Genes, Xu traces the Communist Party's roots to secretive terrorist groups.
The so-called Communist Party is a creation of Lenin. But actually, Lenin didn't really create such an important institution from scratch. Instead, Lenin inherited these principles from those terrorist organizations. A leading example is the organization called the People's Will. This People's Will Party, they call themselves as terrorists. And their core strategy is using terrorist approach to achieve their political goals.
Xu says Lenin and all the main founders of the Bolsheviks were originally from those secretive terrorist organizations. He says that is why Lenin could successfully reconstruct all the principles inherited from the existing terrorist secretive organizations into principles for communists. The political economist says the brutality of the Communist Party comes from two major sources.
One source is the idea that there exists only one truth. The truth to prevail. For the truth to prevail, you have to eliminate everything wrong.
That ideology, according to Xu, is key because it provides justification and legitimacy. The other part, he says, is in practice, with a whole structure based upon the secretive terrorist organizations.
There is a tradition to eliminate your political rivals. So your political rivals become enemies. So they will not allow for the existence of anyone who is going to disagree.
Within this kind of structure, the fight for political power is a brutal life and death struggle. Xu points to Stalin's great purges in the Soviet Union, China's Cultural Revolution, and today's anti-corruption campaigns as examples of that ruthless continuity. And Xu warns the danger is growing. He says China is no longer hiding its strength. With rapid military expansion and a shift toward a semi-military economy, Beijing is signaling its intent to project power abroad. Ignoring this, he says, could have fatal consequences. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And Xu's book again is Institutional Genes. Moving on, France's famed dining culture is under strain as restaurants lose customers. Rising prices, tighter budgets, and new habits are reshaping how people eat, leaving many restaurant owners struggling to adapt. NTD international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
France is known for its long lunches and lingering dinners. However, many restaurant owners said they've seen fewer customers lately. Professional points to rising prices, driven by inflation as a key factor. According to the Hospitality Union, restaurant attendance fell 15 to 20% in July and August, with some regions seeing drops of up to 30%. Diners are also ordering less, skipping starters, sharing desserts, and choosing a glass of wine instead of a bottle. Restaurant owner Alain Fontaine says this is part of a trend that began 5 years ago.
In fact, just to assess how dangerous the situation is, 25 restaurants are closing every day. Since the COVID crisis, there has been a clear acceleration. There was a slow decline before, now there is a sharp one. We are seeing more bankruptcies, the desertification of restaurants, and a shift in consumption habits.
He says there are many factors behind the shift. In addition to the rising cost of living, Fontaine says remote work after COVID has encouraged people to order food deliveries instead of dining out.
We let the French and tourists go to fast food restaurants, steam restaurants, and others. And that's something the government needs to respond to today. Because that's a fact. In 2030, or rather in 2040, there will be no more traditional restaurants in France as you know them if we don't react.
Fontaine is a restaurant owner who continues to practice what's called traditional French cuisine, a menu priced between $16 and $27 on average, including starter, main course and dessert, made with fresh ingredients and with dishes rooted in French culinary traditions. While some French restaurant owners have chosen not to raise prices and still manage to do well, newcomers to the restaurant world face very steep challenges. He says there's hope to change the shift, pointing to tourism as a major supporter of French cuisine.
We know that 43% of tourists who come to France come for the food, for the appeal of the food. When Americans come in and see the decor and hear the way we talk, the way we express ourselves, and taste the food and say amazing, it's like a medal for me every time. That's it. We have to save that. We must remain optimistic. There is a generation of young people who are truly enthusiastic and passionate about this profession. As I said, we will have to give them the means to communicate, but we must also be careful to reintroduce restaurants in local communities.
In September 2024, Fontaine succeeded in having French restaurants and cafes added to UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And staying with food, a new study from South Dakota State University says eating red meat as part of a high-quality diet supports brain health, gut health, and could even support your mental health. Joining us now to discuss is Sheridan Genrich, a nutritionist and health reporter with the Epoch Times. Good to have you with us this morning, Sheridan. The full study is still under review before publication, but what does the research suggest about red meat's effects on brain health?
Good morning, Steph. Yeah, this study is in the preliminary findings, but what they found is that those nearly 5,000 adults who ate lean red meat as part of a high-quality, nutrient-rich diet, which is the key part, they had higher levels of the brain-critical micronutrients, zinc, iron, selenium, B12, and choline, which are really vital for mental health. So the key part is that it was part of a moderately amount of lean red meat, and that diets also improved depression rates and bipolar disorder rates, but it was part of a balanced, healthy diet. It wasn't the only part of it.
And on that point, so there is a phenomenon where sometimes if someone goes vegan or vegetarian, they might end up just eating potato chips, which is, of course, not the equivalent that we're talking about. But people out there do sometimes say if they're vegetarian or such that they can get the nutrients they need elsewhere. What unique nutrients, if any, are found in red meat that support mental health?
Yeah, well, it's the bioavailable iron, which is the heme iron that's not available in plant sources. The zinc is also really essential for brain and gut health, and vitamin B12. And these are the highest levels in red meat, as opposed to even chicken or eggs and other sources of protein. Creatine and carnitine are also really important nutrients, not to mention that red meat has all the essential amino acids in concentrated amounts. So they play a vital role. I mean, zinc, for example, is extremely important, and if you have a deficiency, it can lead to depression, hyperactivity, loss of sense or smell or taste, and aggression and hormone imbalances. So these are just nutrients we really, really need, and we don't get them unless we supplement them or get them from real animal foods.
And of course, the picture of what makes up good health has so many different intricate factors at play here, but you might be experiencing some of these symptoms that you've spoken about and not realize that it could be related simply to what's on your dinner plate. So what impact has quality red meat been shown to have on gut health specifically?
Well, it improves the gut diversity. And what they know from research is that when you have a better diverse gut balance, so that's the good and the bad bacteria, then, the good and dominating, you have a better mood, better cognitive function, lower rates of depression. And this just supports previous research that animal protein is vital for gut health as well.
Do we know what's the mechanism at play there that red meat specifically helps with gut bacteria? That's a new thing for me.
Well, I think it's when we isolate or have such a restrictive diet that's very rigid, our gut bacteria get used to just eating that food alone. So when we reintroduce a little bit of a broader range, and I'm meaning from real whole foods versus processed foods, and when we talk about meat, we're not talking about the hot dogs, the pizza toppings, and the deli meats. The processed meats are not in the same category. But our gut bacteria get used to eating a wide variety of real wholesome foods that our ancestors knew and ate as well.
Right. The wisdom is all there. It's just relearning the simplicity of it, really. How do you respond to the concern that some people have about red meat and skepticism about its potential health benefits?
Yeah, well, the studies are actually really confusing sometimes for the public. I understand that. What we need to look at is the source of the red meat in the study. Look at also, so we're avoiding factory farm meats that are high in artificial hormones that are sometimes given to the animals. We're looking for better quality, grass-fed, lean red meat. And that is what they don't often talk about in the studies. So they put often the processed meats in with the other meats. And looking also where the funding is coming from with any of these studies, and that the observational nutrition studies, they generally don't distinguish what the rest of someone's diet is like. So if someone's got a poor quality overall diet and lifestyle, and then they single out just red meat, it just gives a negative outcome, but it's not looking at the big picture. And it's really actually doing harm to the public.
So there's quite a distinction here between high quality and low quality meats. Of course, high quality meats do cost more, but perhaps now seeing this potential long range benefits that it can provide, from gut health to brain health to mood, it may be worth just adjusting your budget if you need to accommodate that more to get in that high quality meat. Thank you so much for your time today, Sheridan Genrich. Good to speak with you.
Thanks, Steph.
And coming up, Sao Paulo in Brazil is gearing up for the NFL season opener. Massive murals adorn apartment buildings, and a giant football has taken over a main avenue in the city.
And leaders in the nation's capital share Labor Day greetings, while the Labor Department's headquarters shows off a decorative look for the holiday. We're going to have that and more. We'll be right back.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
With almost 4 decades in the spotlight, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. With her gorgeous, age-defying skin, US Weekly says whatever she's doing, it's clearly working. How does her skin still look firm, smooth, and youthful at 59? It's meaningful beauty. And now, with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever, delivering our age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin to fight wrinkles where they begin. Just wait until you see the difference meaningful beauty can make for you.
Instant hydration, instant plumping. My skin looks amazing.
What I'm most proud of is over 5 million women have trusted Meaningful Beauty, and they're getting great results. And I get that feedback from them in airports, supermarkets, walking down the street, and I love it.
And today, we are celebrating 20 years of meaningful beauty with a brand new offer you don't want to miss. You can get the entire advanced Meaningful Beauty system with all 5 age-defying super treatments. And when you order today, you'll receive our Targeted Treatment Duo, a $128 value free. Introducing the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules to target crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around your mouth. Plus, you'll also get the new Skin Renewing Facial Tool with heat, massage, and red light to boost the absorption of the wrinkle smoothing capsules and reduce the appearance of puffiness. The Skin Renewing Facial Tool and the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules together create Meaningful Beauty's amazing targeted treatment duo.
This plus this equals incredible results.
Get all this, a $300 value, for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
If you haven't tried Meaningful Beauty yet, this new offer is something you don't want to miss.
This special offer is not available in any store, so don't wait. Scan the code, call the number below, or go to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Democratic and Republican leaders in Washington, D.C. shared greetings for Labor Day.
And the White House highlights its efforts to make improvements for the American worker. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Democrat and Republican leaders celebrate Labor Day with messages on social media. Former President Biden writes, "Today we celebrate American workers, the heart and soul of our nation." Vice President J.D. Vance writes, "Happy Labor Day to the workers who make America great." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer shares a Labor Day greeting with a video from New York.
I love New York labor.
And the White House touts efforts to improve the private sector, including, quote, slashing job-killing regulations by reducing penalties on small businesses and creating more jobs by bringing manufacturing and production, quote, back home. The White House also highlighted its efforts to create more apprenticeship programs, something Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Remir says she's been working on.
The president wants 1 million active apprentices, and so I'm on the ground talking to the trades, talking to the firefighters, talking to law enforcement.
And this Labor Day, amid President Trump's beautification efforts for Washington, D.C., the Department of Labor is decked out with hundreds of American flags in its lawn and 2 big photos, one of President Trump and one of President Theodore Roosevelt, along with a giant American flag in the center. The Department of Labor was established in 1913 by President William Howard Taft. Labor Day was first recognized as a holiday on a national level in 1894. President Grover Cleveland signed a law establishing the first Monday in September as Labor Day. Coming into the weekend, some members of President Trump's cabinet shared stories of their first jobs.
My first job was as a lifeguard.
My first job was working in the Washington Zoo.
My first job was not unique. It was delivering newspapers in downtown Honolulu.
Well, I started at my local community library.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Some nice personalizing touches there. And great report from Jason. All right, next up in Manchester, England, a band is giving new meaning to organic songwriting.
That's right. Plants and fungi are taking center stage with the help of bionic arms.
It was magical just to actually see a plant and to see it actually move quickly and have arms and start to play an instrument was just absolutely incredible. We connect the plants through some equipment that measures the internal bioelectrical signals in the plant, and that's converted into a music language which is called MIDI. And that is then translated into motor signals, which is how the robotic arms move.
So John Ross, Andy Kidd, and their mushrooms together make up a group called Bionic and the Wires. They've been getting mushrooms and plants to make music since 2023.
The mushrooms are supplied by a local urban greening initiative called Sow the City. The band proposes that the project helps people see plants and fungi as active, emotional beings. And I have to say, not quite dance music, but somewhat cerebral.
It's very placid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of, it kind of washes over you.
Yes.
But I mean, it's very cool, though, that they're actually taking thought signals from those plants and they're able to translate it into sound.
Yes, it's been known for some time that mushrooms can communicate through electrical signals underground with other parts of themselves as their little fungi spores kind of can travel quite far across the earth. But in 2022, a study published in Royal Society Open Science actually found that according to these electrical spikes, they identified groupings of patterned electrical spikes that they described as potentially some kind of language, identifying potentially around 50 words. They also said, it could also mean nothing, but it does seem that they are communicating something amongst themselves. So as
they say, the fungus is among us, right?
Right.
I was curious, so I'm a dork here, but I had to go and look at the most expensive mushrooms because some of these can be quite a delicacy. So the Yartsa gunbu is known as the caterpillar fungus. $50,000 per pound. They haven't been able to cultivate it commercially, so they can only grab it in the wild.
Wow.
And apparently it's considered a luxury status symbol.
I mean, I'd be interested to hear what kind of music that one makes. We'll have to wait and see if the story comes out.
Caterpillar fungus music, right? It's quite rare.
Maybe that's the dance music we're looking for. All right, Brazil is embracing the NFL spirit. A giant American football has taken over the Sao Paulo's main avenue, and the murals have colored apartment buildings.
That's right. The artwork is attracting attention ahead of Friday's season opener between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs.
When you start to learn the team's strategies and get to know the stories behind them, that makes you fall in love with the sport. Whether it will ever become as popular as Brazilian soccer, I think that's unlikely. But Brazilians do have room in their hearts for other sports.
We are the country of soccer. We love soccer. But I discovered while painting the previous mural for last year's game that our country has many American football fans. And the NFL gave me a lot of creative freedom to design the artwork however I wanted and to bring in some of the Brazilian flair that's part of my work.
Local officials and organizers expect the game and surrounding events to inject about $60 million into Sao Paulo's economy, from tourism to hospitality. Under Andy Reid, the Chiefs have won all 3 of their international matchups, so the team is confident in their approach to these special games.
And the league has announced a multi-year partnership with media giant Globo, making it the official home for NFL coverage across Brazil. Wow, what a mural, what an undertaking. She painted a whole building. But it's true, Brazil, as we heard, their first love is what they call football, but it's what we in America, of course, call soccer. But the most winningest men's World Cup team, of course, Pele is the immortalized Pele of soccer. But it's cool that they're making a concerted effort to spread the game into other countries. I know they play a little bit in Europe. They're going to go down to Brazil.
Yeah.
We, of course, are very excited about our own office league with our fantasy football league. So let the trash talking begin, right?
Right.
Football starts this weekend. It's Dave Martin's season. So.
We will keep you updated.
That's right.
And we've got to wrap up our show, unfortunately, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD News Today, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, coming up.
Round-the-clock original news coverage. You can visit us at ntd.com. You could download our NTD app. We're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at 7 a.m. I'm Carrie Dunn. Thanks for joining.
I'm Stephanie Cox. See you soon.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。